Howdy there, David Duford here at davidduford.com, where I coach, train, and recruit insurance agents to become top producers in such business models like final expense, annuities, and other wonderful insurance sales and marketing models. Thank you for joining. Today's topic is how claim payments works with the final expense business. My goal in doing this video is to hopefully dispel some rumors and misconceptions and just general misunderstandings, is that a word, about how final expense claims work. So I'm going to jump right in and basically define, based off of what we call the 2-year mark in a insurance situation, and contrast what happens before the 2 years and what happens after the 2 years. So here's what I mean. Every single insurance carrier is granted the privilege, a state-granted privilege by each Department of Insurance, to do what's called contesting a death claim, in most cases within 2 years. There's a few states like Kentucky, and then the other one is Kansas, where there's a little different rules here. But what this contestability privilege says is that if a new policy holder, somebody who has been insured effectively for less than 2 years, passes away, that the state grants the right to the insurance company to contest that claim, to investigate it, to ensure, to double check, to make sure that that claim should actually be paid, because perhaps they had missed some information in the underwriting process. Why do they do this? Well, because the reason is that they are worried about adverse claims, or adverse selection, as the insurance lingo goes. And that essentially means they're worried about finding somebody who applied for coverage that should have never gotten it. And then what invariably happens is that all these people load up into a policy that they shouldn't have gotten, and reduces the overall profitability and really destroys the insurance mechanism, where some will get coverage and others don't, who should. Other people get coverage who shouldn't, and then it affects the whole bag in a bad way. So this is something that's not limited, if you're experienced selling final expense, just to the 2-year waiting period products. Those, for a fact, are going to pay. They're going to pay back the premiums paid plus 10% interest. That can vary by carrier. What we're talking about are those who claim and do, if everything checks out, provide first day full coverage. So let me go into kind of what to expect if you have a client that you write with a first day full carrier and then die within that 2-year period, and the claim is contested, because it is always going to be contested. I think, let me backtrack here. The reason I'm explaining this is that every single carrier is going to contest every single natural death claim, at least, that occurs within the first 2 years. There are no carriers, I'll repeat, there are no carriers who will pay a death claim on a contested case until that claim goes through contestability and is determined to be eligible. For the same reasons I mentioned earlier, an insurance company is a money-making operation. It has to listen to shareholders' values, and one of those is maximizing profitability. And the bottom line here, ladies and gentlemen, is that if a carrier pays out in 24 hours to a contested claim and repetitively does this, it's going to find itself in a strangely awkward and possibly damaging financial situation. So understand that this is not something some special carrier out there can magically walk around and avoid. This is a condition of anybody applying for insurance, is that some people lie. Now, not always lies. Sometimes it is information that's not disclosed by the agent. That certainly can happen too. But the point is that there is sometimes a disconnect between what the client seems to qualify for versus what their medical history in full says. The other aspect to that is that many times the information on the Medical Information Bureau or prescription check history is inaccurate or out of date, or not up to date. And so health checks at the time of sale, based off of what happens when they run for the application, can bring back out-of-date information. So this is their claim, the insurance company's claim, as a reason enough to contest claims in that 2 years. And again, moral of the story, many of you out there are probably learning this for the first time, getting frustrated. And this is not just for final expense, this is for all life insurance carriers, okay? All life insurance policies. And are frustrated with this, but this is the case with all of them. It's not some sort of, special thing with some companies. So what do you do if your client dies within that first 2-year process? What can you expect? What's going to happen? Well, the big thing is that, first of all, the carrier is going to want to validate that your client actually died. So you're going to send them a death certificate. Usually the funeral home does that. Once that's done, then once death has been confirmed, the insurance company will obviously see it. They died within the first 2-year period of time, and they're going to file a contestability claim, or essentially say we're contesting it. We're not saying it's not approved, but we're going to double check to see if it should have been approved to begin with. And then at this point is where they do a deep dive into the client's health history, usually wanting to look back 10 years over what has happened with their health. And usually the beneficiary assigned to the policy's responsibility is to help get that medical information to them. So one thing you can help with the family is to have the beneficiary contact the doctors that the deceased used and get medical information faxed or forwarded over to the insurance company. And then after they receive that, they begin to carefully investigate all that medical information. They may request more. And then within a period of time, they come to a decision. I have seen decisions across the board for the few contestable claims that I've had. The fastest one I've seen happened in 3 months. The guy died a year into his plan. They contested it, pulled his information. It was approved, thankfully. I was very happy that happened. I had a claim where the gentleman passed away. He had a perforated bowel during a surgery, completely out of the realm of anything that could have meant he was disqualified. But the company still took 9-10 months. Was it 9-10? Yeah, it was almost a year that they took before they issued an approval on his claim. Now the perception is the company dragged their feet, but it's likely that the client's beneficiary also had something to do with that too, but maybe not. I've seen it across the board, and historically some companies are faster than others. Insurance agents with experience will definitely tell you that. So keep that in mind. This is a process nobody likes. It's best to be upfront with the client about what to expect and understand that this is customary, that everybody would have done this. Doesn't matter. Now, what happens if your client dies after the 2 years of contestability are passed? Well, this is where life for you as the agent, it's a lot easier. Because at this point, the policy is incontestable with the exception of fraud cases. I've never seen them or heard of them really, but they do happen. Most of the time, though, what happens is if it's outside of the 2-year window of contestability, then all the life insurance company need is validation of official documentation of death, a death certificate, and then they fund the payout. The payout period typically is several weeks to a month. They do not drag their feet on it. It generally happens fast. They'll either send a check or open up a money market account for the beneficiary, of which they can write checks out of. Now, you may wonder, too, well, what happens if the client's depending on the funeral home to make the payment? And we'll kind of use this section really to cover both incontestable and contestable, because it is valid. If your client's incontestable, all you need to do is take a policy in. And all funeral homes operate with a clearinghouse, a financial clearinghouse, where for a portion of the fee, the clearinghouse basically fronts the money that the policy death payment will be so that the funeral home can get paid within a matter of days to continue the funeral service. So a lot of people think, well, I can't have my client wait 3 to 5 weeks before he gets paid. The funeral home has to be paid today. Don't worry about that. Tell your clients not to worry, because when they walk in with the policy, the funeral director will ask that person to assign the policy over, and then they will also get permission to basically use this financial clearinghouse in order to take the vast majority of the claim as to be used for the funeral, whatever's needed, and then a small couple of percentage points to be the fee in order to front the money. So this is never an issue with funeral homes with incontestable policies. You just take your policy in there. Their job is to service the bereaved family members. They want to make your life easier. They're your friends in this accord. So they've already got this handled for you, so you don't have to worry about that, and certainly tell your clients not to. The concern, of course, comes when your client has died in contestability. When you take that policy in there, they can assign and basically say, we can use this policy towards the proceeds of the funeral. But in all likelihood, what funeral homes have realized is it's hard to collect money on a dead person. Many times they'll say, look, we're not going to do anything until you come up with money to pay us. And the reason being is that we've been burned so many times trying to be a service to the community that people just leave us holding the bill for thousands and thousands of dollars. So they literally will put people on the ice in the fridge. Hate to sound that bad about it, but they will, before some sort of fund gets paid to do a basic funeral or a cremation in many cases. It's sad to say that, but if you think and put yourself in the shoes of the funeral home, you have to understand that that's what they have to do to maintain their livelihoods, because without their service, there wouldn't be anything to help you out to begin with as the client's family goes. So that's when it's more difficult, and that's when you're going to face things like cremations more often, because those are the cheapest forms, unless family members can come up with the money. So, it's a difficult thing in this business to deal with, the potential that your claim will get contested. It's something we all have to face, but it's not a reason not to get insurance. It's something, again, that everybody faces whenever insurance is sold, and you're going to be in a position to where if you don't sell the policy to the person, they're still facing not being covered, A, and B, still having to go through a 2-year contestability period anyway if they apply for level coverage. And again, the big takeaway here is that just because it's contestable doesn't mean it won't pay. I can think of several policies that were contested that paid. One guy was 85 years old, in otherwise good shape, croaked 6 months into his plans, paid off just fine. Same thing with a couple other policies I mentioned earlier. I have had policies that were contested and did not pay because the client didn't disclose something about her medical records that just wasn't picked up. It does happen even when you try to prevent this. So long story short, it's just a function of this business that is the thing you've got to accept. It's certainly not a reason not to be in this business, and certainly not a reason not to sell a policy today to your client. They need coverage. That's why you're there, so sell it to them. My name is David Duford at davidduford.com. Join me and my team if you're looking for an agency to sell final expense, annuities, and other products. Just go to davidduford.com, click Join Dave's Agency at the top menu to learn more about what we do. Thanks for watching. See ya.